tutorial starts with a song, but it's only a few seconds long.
Computer animation. Computer animation. Computer animation.
Let's get started with animation. Hi folks, it's in the middle of the night, that's why I'm not talking very loud here. We're talking about the texture to geometry command here in the convert section. That's under modify, convert and texture to geometry. I came across this command because I was searching for something completely different, but I was quite amazed to find this because it's more or less useless. But maybe you find a use case, and I show you a very bad use case at the end of this tutorial, really. So let's try to make this work. Texture to geometry needs obviously a texture and a geometry, and we start with a geometry, and the best geometry to work with here is the polygon plane. And now we go to texture to geometry in the option box. And I reset the settings to the defaults. Maximum points to add. We'll raise this parameter later in the second try. And now we need to select an image here. And I'll be using this file. It's a screenshot from one of the British Parliament Brexit sessions here. This is the Prime Minister in the year 2019, Boris Johnson. And I talk about this chap a minute later. So we actually opening this file here for the command texture to geometry. So now it's in here and still doing nothing here. I can close this now. So wait, just to remember, it's texture to geometry in the convert menu, and we leave the defaults as they are and we apply this. This is already a process which is a little bit peculiar because we don't get a feedback. We don't know what's happening. The lower left here you see that it's at 32%, but you don't know what it's actually doing. What it's actually doing is analyzing the image and then splitting up this polygon plane into other segments. So currently we have quads here, and it will change totally when this command is finished. And it takes longer when you raise these parameters, at least most of them here. And now we have the image here. And as you see, it's not scaled properly because the dimensions of the image plane is different. But right now you actually can get an impression of it. And it creates an abstract, like an abstract painting. What we can do now is open and that's pretty shocking, open the hypershade. And here we see all the shaders which this command created. And if we, for example, select the yellow one and select objects with material, these things here are selected, and we can actually go to the face selection here and move this extreme yellow color up. So this is only this kind of yellow. We have different yellows here, but we pick the yellow according to the selection here, the offering in the hypershade. You see the skin of Boris Johnson is in one color more or less, so you can select all the CVs here or the faces here, deselect those and deselect those, and now do something with them, maybe apply a different shader to them or raise or lower them. So I don't know really what this command is good for, but this is a nice try. If you change the maximum points to add, it takes longer to evaluate, but let's try this out. So I undo this and we raise the maximum points to add, and maybe we can scale this up a little bit. So I'm fast forwarding this thing now because it really takes long. Doesn't look very much different, but we have more polygons now. The maximum points to add back to 0 and the search radius from 7 back to say 3 or 2, 3. then apply it. It's much faster now. This is real time. So this is much more crude. You cannot really see what's meant to be in the image except for the tie here. And I wanted to talk about that tie guy here. It doesn't have to do with anything with the tutorial here. His name is Jacob Rees-Mogg. And in the English Wikipedia, you find an interesting paragraph because he's a real controversial person. Rees-Mogg is a controversial figure in British politics. He's been praised as a conviction politician whose anachronistic upper-class mannerisms and consciously traditionalist attitudes are often seen as entertaining. He has been dubbed the honourable member of the 18th century. Actually, he loves the 18th century, and he's against gay marriage, of course, and against strong women. Women belong to the household, etc. Critics view him as a reactionary figure. Some of his positions have made him the target of organized protests. Okay, so that's Jacob Rees-Mogg, quite entertaining, really. And before we leave this really legacy and quite brutal command here, I show you a rendered scene. I called it Texture to Geometry Boris. So now FCheck is reading the animation. It's 370 frames into memory, and then it plays it back at 25 frames per second. So all I did here was extrude the tie of Boris Johnson in the left-hand picture, of course, and this is the ordinary mapping here. It's just I've just mapped that image on the same size plane, but the left one is the texture to geometry version. I know that some people might find it useful, that's why I'm sharing this experience with you, but I think it's a really legacy command which needs to be overhauled or maybe abandoned. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.